We are here today to talk to you about how connected experiences and design work together to really elevate the human experience. There's been a lot of talk around the conference and even the panel that we just heard around experience mix about how do you create these elevated, optimized human experiences, and we're here today with Ryan and Joanna. I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
And I'm going first because my introduction is not going to live up to Joanna's introduction by any stretch of the imagination. As Angel said, my name is Ryan Alderman. I lead the Adobe Alliance for Deloitte here in the US. In terms of background, I have a very strong product design, marketing, and technology background. And as we all know and can tell from this conference, all of those disciplines are rapidly converging.
Okay, I'm Joanna Champagne, and I'm a design researcher, and I ask the question why a lot. That's pretty much my job. I'm also a human-centered designer, particularly focusing on tech and social innovation. I'm part of a group of Deloitte called Doblin, and we focus a lot on innovation and a lot about the ambitions of companies. Excited for this conversation because my previous career was actually with museums. I spent 15 years working at the Smithsonian National Gallery of Art doing storytelling while we tried to get to a nice technical literacy and transform digitally. So excited to be the place we are now where storytelling and technology is happening with you guys today.
Perfect, thank you. And yes, I think she wins on the background.
It's unbelievable.
I'm glad I don't have to introduce myself.
Oh my God.
So Ryan, what we've heard over the last couple of days here at the summit is really how do you use the power of marketing and really take that to drive these experiences, right, holistically across the journey. How do you make marketers into experience makers? And why is it important, right? Why should we care about that? Would love your perspective on that.
No, so you hear so much about, you can't walk down the hall without hearing about experience this, experience that, and one of the reasons we talk a lot about experiences is because experiences matter, and they matter in a massive way. The brand is the experience, and the experience is the brand. The power of that experience trumps any marketing message by literally like a thousand times over. And obviously that's not scientific, and so don't quote me on that. But to make the point, as a marketer, you could go out and you could spend $100 million on measured media, and you could spend $100 million saying how great you are and how great your products are and how you're this and you're that. But if that customer or that prospect comes into your store, your branch, your online experience and has a bad experience, that's going to completely wash away any notion of the marketing message that you sent them. You might as well have wasted that $100 million. And so the power of the experience absolutely trumps marketing and advertising. And the reality is, as marketers, we're just simply not doing a good enough job. According to Forrester, I think 1% of customer experiences would be classified as great. And at Deloitte, and if you look around our booth a little bit, you'll get a sense for this, but we think that the problem is that we insist on calling it the customer experience, which implies this commercial relationship, which presumes a selling type of give me something to buy. And so at Deloitte, what we're doing is we are replacing the C with an H, calling it the human experience, bringing humanity back to all of this, recognizing people as individuals, hopes and dreams, putting purpose before product, and really giving them not something to buy, but something to buy into. And we think that if we do this effectively, we will be a more successful experience company.
And focusing on the end game of loyalty, right? Versus like a single transaction. So, when we think about creating these experiences, a big part of that is building connections, right? And so, Joanna, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about connections and how they play a role in the design of these experiences.
Sure. So, the way we look at it is, the unhelpful answer is connection is everything, right? There's a very famous saying in design, I think it's Frank Shimura, that people ignore designs that ignore people. And it's really true. And, we're practitioners. So when we start a project, sometimes we'll draw a line to the word customer, we'll draw a line to the word user, and we'll say, now does that change your thinking to build connection? But connection really is fundamental in the sense that it enables action. that enables change.
So, we talk a lot about emotions too, and the role that emotions play in experience. The panel that just got off, right? They talk about the experience mix and the power of bringing emotional data, into the experience. So, Ryan, maybe talk a little bit for us about the role of emotions and data in marketing.
It's massive. It's underappreciated. It's 10 times more important than you think it is. All of the research that I've seen that we've done suggests that over 80% of the decisions that we make on a daily basis, and we make a hell of a lot of them, are predicated.
Some good, some bad.
Some good, some bad. I'm an exceptionally emotional person, so it's probably like 99.9% for me. But they're driven by emotion. And so about 10 years ago, we kind of fell in love with this idea of the art and science of marketing, and what we meant by science was kind of bring in this really rational data set. Let's look at impressions, let's bring in CRM data, let's look at clicks and page views and traffic and all those sorts of things. And because of that 80%, because of what you just heard on the previous panel, that's created a massive blind spot in terms of this marketing architecture, this marketing technology that we've built that really limits our ability to deliver personalized, relevant, human experiences. And so what we're doing at Deloitte, and you just heard some of this from the previous panel, is we are finding ways to fill that blind spot by bringing that emotional sentiment data into these architectures so that we can deliver that human experience. And we kind of somewhat flippantly call it IQ plus EQ plus TQ, and quite frankly, the TQ is the technology part of it.
We love our acronyms.
Yeah, it's kind of why we're here. So hugely important, and we're finding ways to make that a bigger part of what we do.
That's awesome. I mean, I find it amazing that I think it's something like less than 10% of brands use emotional and sentiment data across the entire experience. I mean, maybe they collect it for marketing purposes, maybe they collect it for service interactions, but less than 10% of brands use that data across the journey, and it's proven that drives loyalty. It's such an opportunity, I think. Joanna, so given your unique background, right, your history with museums and art, can you talk a little bit about kind of the role that art and design play together to create these emotional experiences that Ryan was talking about?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, they play a really massive role. And I'll say there was a moment in my career, I would say about 20 or so years ago. So imagine it's 1998, right? And we're all trying to figure out the Smithsonian, what to do with the web. And at that point, everyone had just kind of become a webmaster. We didn't have training. And we were trying to figure out, well, what does it really mean as a Smithsonian to go online, right? And I remember one woman said, well, we're storytellers. And I remember the room kind of like froze a little, and some agreed and some didn't. But that really struck me, because at Deloitte and at Dublin, we are storytellers to affect change. So I think why it's important to look at art and what we do for emotion is that art is the most ancient way to storytell, right? It is the most compact way to convey emotion. But also, more importantly, for innovation, art pushes boundaries. And it pushes boundaries as it pushes our culture forward. So my favorite story, to kind of answer your question, in terms of how does it create an emotional experience, is look at what's happening right now in DC. So in the National Portrait Gallery, the Kehinde Wiley and Amy Shepard portraits of the Obamas just went up. Since they went up, National Portrait Gallery has seen an unheard of increase of 1 million visits. That's incredible. That's going to change the museum. It's going to change the legacy of the museum. So from a data point perspective, it's wonderful. 1,000 more people, 1,000 more visits, people through the gift shops, people understanding the Smithsonian. But the other side of that story, from people I heard of and from seeing it in person, is that it's in a very public space, and you see little children in front of it, and you see parents or guardians watching them, and you realize that's a lifetime moment. Being in front of that portrait, seeing that portrait, understanding what it means, they're going to remember that for the rest of their lives. And in museums, we understood that you build those moments. And so we try to pull those kernels into design to create a moment that will last a lifetime, because those moments then let you see companies as lifetime companies. And I think that's a challenge that we really, really enjoy and is very powerful.
And I think that's a great example of, when we talk about creating human experiences, these are pictures of humans, right? And the power of those portraits. And to your point, that's a lifetime memory, right? These are real people, right?
Yeah.
And, Ryan, you talked a little bit earlier about changing out the C for the H, right? How we're no longer thinking about customer experience. We're really trying to think about people as humans. Can you talk a little bit about how design plays into that, creating those experiences?
Yeah, design is such a broad concept. When I did my intro, I talked about having a very strong product design background. So I think a lot about form and function and the design aspect of what we do. And oftentimes when people say design, they just immediately go to the creative, the visual language, the typography. Design also includes physical layouts, it includes service design, it includes offer design. So first and foremost, it's much broader than I think people give it credit for, but it's often overlooked in favor of engineering. And certainly what we say is that yes, it's important that things work and do what they need to do, but they have to work in the way that humans expect them to work, because if they don't, then they're not going to be used, they're going to be abandoned, and ultimately they're not going to drive the business value that led to their creation in the first place. And so what we have found is that how something does what it does is as important, if not more important, than what it does, and that how is a function of the design discipline.
And the companies that don't do that well, they won't be around much longer, right? Because the switching costs these days, it's just me on my phone switching from one app to another app to make a purchase, right?
So. And there's tons and tons of research that just point to the fact that it's just good business. Companies that pay attention to design as a discipline and as a part of a multidisciplinary process just simply perform better. They grow faster, their market capitalization increases at a higher rate, they just do a more effective job servicing and supporting the customer.
And they don't get into these, price wars as much because they're differentiated based on experience, right? So thank you both. Before we wrap up, any parting thoughts or examples you want to share to close us out?
I guess one example to give you a sense of how, as practitioners, we kind of tackle this and think about this, because we think very deeply about design and experience coming together. I'll just go back to the public sector for a second. We have a great group of folks at Dublin who partner with our global public sector practice. And we're very much dedicated to deliberately trying to move with our clients to human-centered government. And we look at data and we look at experience from different perspectives. So we read a data point a couple years ago that really challenged us and made us think. And that's the fact that in 2015, we saw that only 9% of US governments actually talk to people to create services. And if you think about how consumer demand has transformed every other industry, right? We feel this real challenge to really kind of help our government clients get those connection points to understand and really kind of serve. And we're calling this project By the People, because we're really challenging as designers. If it's 9%, is government experience by the people, right? How is the ambition of government and the experience of government meet? So I think that's something we're trying to thread together. And that's a favorite example because it's really a project born out of people who are just really passionate about government working for them. And so I think design experience comes together in our world, in the studio, trying to do something different and really push on the experience and the data and find value in both.
And look at it through that lens, right? Instead of optimizing the organization, optimize that from the experience outside in.
Yeah, yeah.
Ryan?
Just be human, be kind, be grateful.
Awesome. Thank you both very much. Appreciate the time. It's been a pleasure.
Right.
Thank you all.